Kate Sullivan stood in chains as the transport ship shook through the atmosphere of Vorthak Prime. The metal cuffs cut into her wrists, but she did not move or speak. 3 guards watched her from across the cramped holding cell. They looked nervous. Kate had killed men twice their size with her bare hands during the war. The ship captain came down from the cockpit. He was a thin man with pale skin and shaking hands. Kate knew he was afraid of this place. Everyone was afraid of Vorthak Prime. It was a death world where nothing human had ever lived for more than 3 days. "We drop you in 10 minutes, the captain said. His voice cracked when he spoke. "General Blake wanted me to give you a message." Kate looked at him with cold blue eyes. She said nothing. "He says this is what happens to soldiers who forget their place. He says you should have killed those people when he told you to." Kate still said nothing. She remembered the civilians on Kepler Station, families hiding in their homes while Blake ordered his soldiers to burn them out. Kate had refused. She had stood between the general and innocent people. Now, she would die for it. The ship landed hard on rocky ground. Through the small window, Kate could see a red sky and twisted black trees. The air outside looked thick and wrong. Steam rose from cracks in the ground. "Unlock her," the captain told his guards. They took off Kate's chains and gave her a small bag. Inside was 1 week of food, a water bottle, a basic knife, and a small tent. No weapons, no radio, no way to call for help. The ship's door opened. With a loud hiss, hot air rushed in. It smelled like metal and death. Kate walked to the opening and looked out at her new home. Vorthak Prime stretched out before her like a nightmare. The trees were tall and black with thorns instead of leaves. The ground was covered in strange purple grass that moved without wind. In the distance, she could see mountains that glowed with their own light. "Go," the captain said. "The ship leaves in 60 seconds. Kate stepped onto the alien soil. It felt soft under her boots, like walking on flesh. The door closed behind her, and the ship lifted off. Soon it was just a small dot in the red sky. Then it was gone. Kate was alone. She looked around at the hostile landscape. Everything here wanted to kill her. The plants looked sharp and poisonous. Strange sounds came from the dark forest. Something howled in the distance. It sounded like no animal from Earth. Kate picked up her bag and started walking. She needed shelter before dark. She needed water. She needed to understand this place if she wanted to live. The ground under her feet made wet sounds as she walked. Small insects buzzed around her head. They had too many wings and glowing eyes. One landed on her hand, and she brushed it away. Where it touched her skin, there was a small red mark. Kate walked for 2 hours before she found what she was looking for. A hill with caves in its side. She climbed up the rocky slope and looked inside the largest cave. It was deep and dry. No signs of animals living there. It would work for now. She set up her small tent inside the cave and ate some of her food. The water tasted strange, but she drank it anyway. Outside the cave mouth, she could hear the forest coming alive as darkness fell. Roars and screams and sounds she had no names for. On her first night, Kate did not sleep. She sat at the cave entrance with her knife in her hand and watched the forest. Things moved between the trees. Large things with glowing eyes. She saw shapes. That did not make sense. Animals that seemed to bend and twist in ways that hurt to look at. Near midnight, something came close to her cave. Kate heard it climbing up the hill. Heavy footsteps on rock, breathing that sounded like steam from a machine. She gripped her knife tighter and pressed back into the shadows. A head appeared at the cave entrance. It was the size of a car with teeth like swords. 6 eyes looked into the cave. Each eye was a different color, and they moved on their own. The creature sniffed the air and made a sound like breaking glass. Kate did not move. She barely breathed. The creature looked right at her but seemed not to see her in the darkness. After what felt like hours, it went away. Kate heard it moving down the hill and back into the forest. When morning came, Kate was still alive. The red sun rose over the twisted trees and lit up her new world. In daylight, it looked even more dangerous. She could see things moving in the grass, flying creatures with wings like knives, plants that turned to follow her movement. Kate knew she had 6 days of food left. After that, she would have to eat what this world provided or die. She needed to learn fast. She spent the morning exploring near her cave. She found a stream of clear water flowing down from the glowing mountains. She tested it carefully. It did not burn her skin or make her sick. Good. Water was the first thing she needed. Near the stream, she found strange fruits growing on low bushes. They were blue and smelled sweet. Kate cut one open with her knife. Inside was white flesh that looked safe. She ate a small piece and waited. No sickness came. The fruit tasted like nothing from Earth, but it did not hurt her. That afternoon, Kate saw her first real predator up close. She was filling her water bottle at the stream when she heard something behind her. She turned slowly and saw a creature, the size of a wolf, but with 6 legs and skin like black glass. It watched her with intelligent eyes. Kate did not run. Running would make her prey. Instead, she stood up slowly and faced the creature. She held her knife ready but did not attack. The two of them looked at each other for a long moment. The creature tilted its head like it was thinking. Then it made a sound like clicking stones and walked away. It did not attack. Kate realized something important. These creatures were smart. They could think and make choices. That made them more dangerous, but also gave her a chance. Over the next few days, Kate learned the basic rules of staying alive on Vorthak Prime. She learned which plants were safe to eat and which would kill her. She learned to recognize the sounds different predators made. She learned to move quietly and stay hidden. She also learned that this world was more dangerous than anyone had told her. The creatures here did not just hunt for food. They hunted for sport. They enjoyed killing. Some of them seemed to hunt in groups with complex plans. But Kate was learning too. She was a soldier trained for war. She had survived battles that would have broken other people. Every day she lived on this world made her stronger and smarter. Every night she survived was proof that humans could adapt to anything. By the end of her first week, Kate had made her cave into a real shelter. She had found steady sources of food and water. She had avoided being killed by a dozen different predators. Most importantly, she had learned that Vorthak Prime was not just a death world, it was a school, and Kate Sullivan was an excellent student. 3 months on Vorthak Prime had changed Kate Sullivan in ways she never expected. Her skin was darker from the alien sun and covered in small scars from thorns and claws. Her muscles were harder from constant climbing and running. Most importantly, her mind had learned to think like a predator. Kate sat at the entrance of her cave and watched the forest below. She knew every animal that lived in this area now. She knew when they hunted and where they slept. She knew which ones were dangerous and which ones were just afraid. This knowledge had kept her alive when a dozen other things should have killed her. The cave was no longer the simple shelter she had made on her first night. Kate had expanded it deeper into the hill. She had built walls from stones and clay. She had made furniture from the bones of dead animals. The back of the cave was storage for her growing collection of tools and weapons. Kate had learned to make things from what the planet gave her. Her first real weapon was a spear made from the spine of a creature she called a thorn walker. The spine was harder than steel and sharp enough to cut through rock. She had wrapped the handle with strips of hide from a six-legged beast that had tried to eat her in her second month. Making the spear had taken her 3 weeks. First, she had to kill the thorn walker. Then she had to figure out how to remove its spine without breaking it. Then she had to learn how to shape and sharpen it. Every step was dangerous. Every mistake could have killed her. But when it was done, she had a weapon better than anything the human military had given her. The six-legged beast had been harder to kill. Kate called them shadow cats because they could bend light around themselves to become almost invisible. She had tracked one for days before she understood how they hunted. They used their light bending to confuse prey, then attacked from behind with claws that could cut through metal. Kate had turned their own trick against them. She had learned to watch for the small signs that gave them away, the way grass bent under their invisible feet, the way their breathing made tiny clouds in the cold morning air. When she finally attacked, she used a trap made from twisted vines and sharp stones. The shadow cat had died before it knew what killed it. Its hide made excellent armor. Kate had fashioned a vest that could stop most claws and teeth. The hide also kept her warm during the cold nights when the temperature dropped below freezing. Best of all, it seemed to confuse other predators. When she wore it, they sometimes had trouble seeing her clearly. But Kate's greatest discovery had come in her 10th week on the planet. She had been exploring the ruins of an old camp when she found something that changed everything. Hidden under fallen rocks was a metal box with human writing on it. Inside were the records of a scientific expedition that had come to Vorthak. Prime 15 years ago, the records told Kate things that no one had bothered to mention when they dropped her here to die. Vorthak Prime was not just a death world. It was rich in quantum crystals that could power faster than light travel. The planet was worth trillions of credits to whoever could mine it. The scientific team had been sent to study the predators and find ways to kill them safely. They had failed. All 12 members of the team had died in their 4th month. But their notes gave Kate valuable information about the creatures she faced every day. She learned their real names and their weaknesses. She learned which ones hunted alone and which ones worked in packs. Most importantly, she learned that the deadliest predators had a territory system that could be used against them. Kate spent weeks studying the territorial maps the scientists had made. She learned that the creatures called void renders controlled the most dangerous areas. They were the size of buildings and could move through space itself by bending reality. No human weapon could hurt them, but they only came out during the storms that hit the planet every few months. The records also mentioned pack hunters called phase wolves that could walk through solid matter. They were smaller than void renders, but hunted in groups of 30 or more. They communicated with each other using sounds too high for human ears to hear. The scientists had built special equipment to listen to these sounds before the wolves killed them all. Kate found some of this equipment still working in the ruins. She spent days learning how to use it. When she finally heard the wolves talking to each other, she understood something amazing. They were not just smart animals. They had language. They made plans. They could be tricked if she was clever enough. Her first chance to test this knowledge came in her 13th week. A pack of phase wolves had moved into her territory and was killing all the smaller animals she depended on for food. Kate knew she had to drive them away or starve. She spent 3 days watching the pack and learning their routines. She used the equipment to listen to their conversations. Slowly, she began to understand their simple language. They had words for danger and food and territory. They had calls that meant attack and retreat and wait. Kate made her move on the 4th night. She used the recording equipment to copy the wolves' voices. Then she played their own calls back to them from different directions. She made it sound like a rival pack was attacking from 3 sides at once. The phase wolves panicked. They ran in circles trying to find enemies that were not there. They attacked each other in the confusion. Half the pack fled into the deeper forest. The rest followed soon after when Kate kept playing the fake attacks. By morning, her territory was clear. The trick worked so well that Kate began using it on other predators. She learned to copy the warning calls of flying hunters to scare away ground predators. She learned to make the territory marks of large beasts to keep smaller ones from bothering her. Slowly, she was becoming something new. Not just a human trying to survive, but a player in the planet's deadly game. Kate's greatest challenge came in her 14th week, when she encountered something the scientists had only theorized about. A creature they called a reality shaper. It was like a giant spider made of liquid metal that could change the rules of physics around itself. Gravity reversed near it. Time moved differently. Solid objects became liquid. The reality shaper had claimed the area around a rich deposit of quantum crystals. Kate needed those crystals to power some of the equipment she had found, but getting close to the creature was like walking into a nightmare, where nothing worked the way it should. Kate spent a week studying the reality shaper from a safe distance. She watched how it moved and how it affected the world around it. She noticed that its power had limits. The changes it made were strongest near its body and weaker farther away. If she could stay at the edge of its influence, she might be able to fight it. The battle took place on a moonless night when the creature was less active. Kate used everything she had learned about this world. She wore her shadow cat armor and carried weapons made from local materials. She moved like the predators had taught her to move, silent and patient and deadly. The fight lasted 3 hours. Kate had to constantly adapt as the reality shaper changed the rules around her. When gravity reversed, she used her climbing skills to fight upside down. When time slowed, she moved with the patience of a hunter. When her weapons became liquid, she used the creature's own distortions against it. In the end, Kate won by using the simplest trick of all. She got the reality shaper to chase her into a narrow canyon where its size worked against it. Then she brought down tons of rock on its head, using explosives she had made from local minerals. When the dust settled, Kate stood over the corpse of something that should have been impossible to kill. In her hands were quantum crystals worth, more than most planets. But more importantly, she had proven something to herself. She was no longer just surviving on Vorthak Prime. She was conquering it. 6 months on Vorthak Prime had transformed Kate Sullivan into something that would have terrified her former commanding officers. She moved through the alien forest like a ghost. Her body was lean and hard as steel. Her eyes had learned to see in almost total darkness. Most importantly, her mind had become something between human intelligence and animal instinct. Kate's cave had become a fortress carved deep into the living rock. The walls were lined with trophies from her hunts. The skull of a crusher beast hung near the entrance. Its bone was harder than titanium and gleamed like black metal in the dim light. Beside it were the claws of 3 different shadow cats and the crystalline fangs of a void snake. Each trophy represented a victory over something that evolution had designed to be the perfect killer. Kate had studied each creature for weeks before making her move. She had learned their weaknesses and turned their own strengths against them. Every hunt had made her smarter and more dangerous. The most impressive trophy was a set of wings from a sky terror. The creature had been 30 feet from wingtip to wingtip, with a beak that could crack stone. It had hunted from above using eyes that could see heat and movement from miles away. Sky terrors were considered impossible to kill because they never landed and could outfly any ground-based weapon. Kate had killed it by thinking like the creature itself. She had spent 3 weeks studying its hunting patterns. Sky terrors always followed the same routes when they hunted. They preferred certain types of prey and avoided others. Most importantly, they were territorial. Males would fight to the death to protect their nesting areas. Kate had used this knowledge to set a trap that took her 2 months to prepare. She had found the creature's territory and built a fake nest in the center of it. Then she had spent weeks making herself smell like a female sky terror using glands from smaller flying creatures. When the male came to investigate, she was ready with a weapon made from the compressed air chambers of a deep cave fish. The weapon fired a spear with enough force to punch through starship armor. Kate had only 1 shot because the compressed air took hours to refill. She had waited until the sky terror was hovering directly above her fake nest before firing. The spear had gone through its heart and pinned it to a tree. But Kate's greatest achievement was not any single hunt. It was the way she had learned to use the planet's ecosystem like a weapon. She could trigger stampedes of crusher beasts to clear areas of smaller predators. She could use the territorial disputes between different species to eliminate threats without fighting them herself. She had even learned to tame some of the less aggressive creatures. Her most useful ally was a wounded sky manta she had found dying near the quantum crystal deposits. Sky mantas were massive flying creatures that fed on electrical energy from the storms. This one had been attacked by a pack of phase wolves and left for dead with torn wings and infected wounds. Kate had spent weeks nursing it back to health. She had cleaned its wounds with medicine made from local plants. She had fed it small amounts of electrical energy from her equipment. Most importantly, she had protected it from other predators while it healed. The sky manta had bonded with her in a way that surprised them both. It followed her commands and helped her scout large areas from the air. Its hide was thick enough to stop most attacks, and its electrical discharge could stun even large predators. Together they made a team that could take on threats neither could face alone. Kate needed every advantage she could get because she had decided to hunt the most dangerous predator on Vorthak Prime. The Void Render was a creature so deadly that the scientific expedition had only seen it once before they all died. It was described in their records as a living nightmare that could step through space itself and appear anywhere without warning. The Void Render lived in the storm regions where constant lightning and electromagnetic interference made it almost impossible to track. It was the size of a building with tentacles that could stretch for hundreds of feet. Its body was made of something that was not quite solid and not quite energy. Conventional weapons passed right through it. Kate had been preparing for this hunt for 2 months. She had studied every piece of information the scientists had gathered. She had observed the storm regions from a safe distance and learned the patterns of the electrical activity. Most importantly, she had crafted weapons specifically designed to hurt something that existed partially outside normal space. Her main weapon was a spear made from quantum crystal fused with the neural tissue of a reality shaper. The combination created a blade that could cut through dimensional barriers and hurt creatures that existed in multiple realities at once. Making it had nearly killed her 3 times and taken every quantum crystal she had collected. Kate also carried charges made from the explosive organs of deep cave fish mixed with refined storm energy. These charges could disrupt the electromagnetic fields the Void Render used to move through space. If she could time them right, she might be able to trap the creature in normal reality long enough to attack it. The hunt began during the worst storm of the season. Kate rode her sky manta into the heart of the electromagnetic chaos where sensors failed and radio communication was impossible. Lightning struck constantly, and the air itself seemed to twist and bend. This was the Void Render's domain where it ruled as the ultimate predator. Kate found the creature feeding on the energy from a massive lightning strike. It was even larger than the record suggested. Its body shifted between solid and transparent as it absorbed power from the storm. Tentacles the thickness of trees writhed around it, testing the air for threats or prey. Kate waited for her moment. The Void Render was focused on feeding and had not noticed her approach. She guided her sky manta in a wide circle around the creature while she prepared her weapons. The electromagnetic discharge from her mount was lost in the chaos of the storm. The attack began when Kate dropped her first explosive charge. It detonated 50 feet from the Void Render and sent ripples through the dimensional field around it. The creature roared with a sound like reality tearing apart. Its body became more solid as its ability to phase through space was disrupted. Kate pressed her attack. She dropped charge after charge in a pattern designed to collapse the creature's dimensional refuge. Each explosion made the Void Render more solid and more vulnerable, but it also made it more angry. The creature began to fight back. Tentacles lashed out with enough force to shatter mountains. They moved so fast they seemed to be in multiple places at once. Kate's sky manta dodged desperately as the Void Render tried to drag them into its crushing embrace. The battle lasted for hours as the storm raged around them. Kate used every skill she had learned on this deadly world. She moved like a predator. She thought like prey. She struck when the enemy was vulnerable and retreated when it was strong. Most importantly, she remembered that humans had one advantage over every other species in the galaxy. Humans never gave up. The end came when Kate managed to get close enough to use her quantum crystal spear. She drove it deep into what she hoped was the creature's heart. The blade cut through dimensional barriers and struck something vital. The Void Render screamed and began to collapse in on itself. Kate barely escaped as the creature imploded. The Void Render folded into a point of impossible darkness and then vanished completely. Where it had been, there was only empty air and the fading echoes of its death cry. Kate landed her sky manta on a stable piece of ground and looked around at the aftermath of the battle. The storm was ending and the electromagnetic interference was fading. In the distance, she could see the lights of what looked like artificial structures. She had won the greatest hunt of her life, but more importantly, she had discovered that she was not alone on this planet. Someone else was here, and they had been watching her fight. The artificial lights Kate had seen after killing the Void Render led her to the greatest discovery of her time on Vorthak Prime. Hidden beneath the storm region was a vast underground facility that had been operating in secret for decades. The entrance was concealed by holographic projectors that made it look like natural rock formations. Kate approached carefully with her sky manta circling overhead as a lookout. Her months of hunting had taught her to be suspicious of anything that seemed out of place. The facility was too clean and too organized to be abandoned. Someone was maintaining it, and that someone might not be happy to see her. She found the main entrance hidden behind a waterfall of acid rain that constantly fell from the storm clouds above. The door was made of the same quantum crystal material. She had been collecting but shaped into sheets thinner than paper and harder than diamond. No primitive weapon could have broken through it. Fortunately, Kate no longer carried primitive weapons. Her quantum crystal spear cut through the door like it was made of cloth. The alarms that started screaming when she broke in told her that the facility was definitely not abandoned. The first level was a mining operation bigger than anything Kate had imagined. Automated machines worked constantly to extract quantum crystals from deep beneath the planet's surface. Conveyor belts carried tons of raw crystal to processing centers, where they were refined into the pure energy matrices needed for faster-than-light travel. Kate realized that someone had been mining Vorthak Prime for years while using its reputation as a death world to keep people away. The creatures that had nearly killed her dozens of times were nothing more than guard animals protecting the most profitable mining operation in human space. But the mining equipment was not what made Kate angry. The thing that filled her with cold rage was what she found on the second level. Row after row of cryogenic freezing chambers stretched as far as she could see. Each chamber held a human being in suspended animation. According to the labels, these people had been frozen for anywhere from 5 years to 50 years. Kate read the names and files of the frozen prisoners. Scientists who had discovered inconvenient truths. Military officers who had refused illegal orders. Politicians who had asked too many questions. Journalists who had investigated the wrong stories. All of them officially dead, but actually stored like spare parts in this hidden facility. She found her own file in the facility's computer system. According to the records, she was Subject 847 in an experiment to test human adaptability on death worlds. Her psychological profile and military training had made her an ideal test subject. The people who sent her here had been betting on how long she would survive and what she would learn before the planet killed her. But Kate had not died. Instead, she had become something they had not planned for. The monitoring stations hidden throughout the planet had recorded every hunt and every victory. The facility's computers contained detailed analysis of her tactics and behavior. She had been observed and studied like a laboratory animal. The third level of the facility revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. Kate found offices belonging to General Blake and 2 people she had never heard of. Director Patricia Vance was listed as head of Quantum Resource Development. Ryan Cross was identified as a council member for interplanetary mining rights. Together they controlled the illegal operation that had turned Vorthak Prime into their personal treasure vault. Kate spent hours reading through their files and communications. The conspiracy reached into the highest levels of human government. Dozens of officials were being paid to look the other way while political enemies disappeared. The profits from the quantum crystal mining were being used to fund private armies and buy influence throughout human space. But the worst discovery was in the biological research section. The facility's scientists had been experimenting on the planet's predators for years. They had been trying to create enhanced versions that could be used as biological weapons. The void render Kate had killed was not a natural creature at all. It had been artificially enhanced with quantum technology to make it even more deadly. Kate found records of other experiments that made her sick to read. Scientists had been combining different predator species to create new types of killing machines. They had been testing chemical weapons on captured animals to see how they reacted. They had even been trying to create hybrid creatures that were part predator and part machine. The goal was to develop biological weapons that could be dropped on enemy planets to eliminate resistance without damaging valuable resources. A single, enhanced shadow cat could kill hundreds of people before it was stopped. A pack of modified phase wolves could eliminate an entire city. The creatures of Vorthak Prime were being turned into instruments of genocide. Kate realized that her survival had given these people exactly what they wanted. She had proven that humans could adapt to fight the planet's predators. The tactics she had developed could be used to train soldiers for future operations. Her techniques for hunting and killing could be turned into military doctrine for conquering other death worlds. She had thought she was fighting for her life, but she had actually been doing their research for them. Every creature she killed had been studied. Every weapon she created had been analyzed. Every survival technique she developed had been recorded and classified for future use. The anger that filled Kate was colder and more dangerous than anything she had felt while fighting for her life. These people had not just tried to kill her. They had tried to use her. They had turned her into a weapon against her own will and then planned to use what she learned to hurt other people. Kate began to plan her revenge as she explored the rest of the facility. The fourth level contained security barracks for the guards who protected the operation. Most of them were off duty, but a few were monitoring the perimeter sensors. Kate avoided them while she gathered intelligence on their numbers and equipment. The fifth level was a communications center that stayed in contact with the outside galaxy. Kate found shipping schedules and personnel records. More importantly, she found the facility's connection to the interplanetary data network. For the first time in months, she had access to news from human space. What she read made her even angrier. General Blake had been promoted to head of planetary security. Director Vance had been given a medal for her work developing new energy sources. Ryan Cross had been elected to the High Council on a platform of tough action against criminals and terrorists. All three of them were being praised as heroes, while the people they had murdered were rotting in frozen storage below ground. Kate realized that exposing them would not be enough. She needed to destroy their operation and rescue their victims. Most importantly, she needed to make sure they paid for what they had done. Kate spent 2 days mapping the facility and learning its routines. She counted 30 guards working in shifts around the clock. The mining equipment was controlled by artificial intelligence that could not be easily fooled. The communications center was heavily protected and monitored by systems from orbit, but Kate had advantages that the facility's designers had not planned for. She knew the planet's predators better than anyone alive. She had weapons made from materials they could not detect. Most importantly, she had 18 months of experience fighting things much more dangerous than human guards. Kate began her campaign by releasing some of the predators that were being held in the research labs. Modified shadow cats and enhanced phase wolves were perfect for creating chaos among guards who had never faced them in actual combat. The facility's security was designed to keep predators out, not to deal with them running loose in the corridors. While the guards dealt with the predator attacks, Kate sabotaged the mining equipment and the power systems. She used her knowledge of the planet's electrical storms to overload the quantum crystal processors. Explosions began to rock the facility as critical systems failed, but Kate's real target was not the facility itself. It was the 3 people responsible for creating it. According to the communication logs, General Blake was scheduled to arrive in 2 days for a personal inspection of the operation. Kate would be waiting for him. She had 18 months of anger to work off, and she intended to collect every bit of interest that had accumulated on the debt these people owed her. General Blake arrived on Vorthak Prime with a security detail of 20 soldiers and enough firepower to level a small city. He expected to find a smooth operation extracting billions of credits worth of quantum crystals from the planet's core. Instead, he found a facility in chaos with half the guards dead and predators running loose in the corridors. Kate watched his ship land from her hiding place in the storm region above the facility. She had spent 2 days preparing for this moment. Every lesson she had learned from 18 months of hunting was about to be tested against the man who had sent her here to die. The facility's surviving guards met Blake at the landing pad with reports of system failures and animal attacks. Kate listened to their radio communications from equipment she had salvaged from the wreckage. Blake was furious that his secret operation was falling apart just when he needed it most. "Find whatever is causing this and kill it," Blake ordered his men. "I don't care if it's predators or sabotage or both. This facility is too important to lose." Kate smiled as she heard his voice. Blake still thought he was dealing with animals or equipment failures. He had no idea that the woman he had tried to murder was now the most dangerous predator on the planet. She began her hunt that night when the security patrols were at their weakest. Kate had learned from the Shadow Cats how to move without being seen. She had learned from the Phase Wolves how to appear and disappear without warning. Most importantly, she had learned from the Void Render how to be in multiple places at once by using the planet's own geography against her enemies. The first guard died at his post overlooking the main entrance. Kate dropped from above like a sky terror and killed him before he could call for help. She took his weapons and radio and melted back into the darkness of the storm region. The second guard died an hour later in the mining section. Kate used the noise of the automated equipment to mask her approach. The man never knew what hit him. His body was found 20 minutes later, but by then Kate was already stalking her next target. By morning, 5 guards were dead and the rest were jumping at shadows. Blake ordered them to work in pairs and stay in the lighted areas. He still thought he was dealing with the planet's native predators that had somehow gotten inside the facility. Kate let him think that for another day while she gathered intelligence on his security detail. She watched them from hiding places throughout the facility. She learned their routines and their weaknesses. Most importantly, she identified the soldiers who were just following orders and the ones who were true believers in Blake's cause. The soldiers who were just doing their jobs, Kate left alone. The ones who had volunteered for this assignment and knew what they were protecting died in the most creative ways Kate could devise. She used traps learned from studying the planet's predators. She used poisons extracted from local plants. She used the facility's own security systems against the people they were supposed to protect. Blake realized he was being hunted when his personal bodyguard was found dead in a locked room with no sign of how the killer had entered or escaped. The man had been killed with a weapon that left no trace except a perfectly round hole through his heart. Kate had used her quantum crystal spear and then removed all evidence of its use. "We're dealing with something intelligent," Blake told his remaining men. "Something that knows this facility better than we do. I want every room searched and every hiding place eliminated." Kate heard this order from her position in the facility's ventilation system. She had been using the air ducts and maintenance tunnels to move around undetected. Blake's search would find some of her hiding places, but not all of them. She had learned to think like prey as well as predator during her time on the planet. The Search began at dawn with teams of soldiers working through the facility level by level. Kate stayed ahead of them by using her knowledge of the building's layout and the movement patterns she had observed. When they searched the upper levels, she was in the mining section. When they moved to the lower levels, she was already back, on the surface. But Kate was not just running from Blake's soldiers. She was herding them toward the place where she wanted to make her final stand. The Quantum Crystal Processing Center was a maze of machinery and energy conduits where her advantages would be greatest. The constant noise would mask her movements, and the electromagnetic interference would disrupt their communications. Kate spent the day setting traps throughout the processing center. She used the facility's own mining equipment to create deadfalls and crushing mechanisms. She rigged the quantum crystal refineries to overload and explode at her command. Most importantly, she released the last of the captured predators in the area where Blake would have to come to reach her. That evening, Kate sent Blake a message using the facility's communication system. She appeared on every screen in the building, at once with her face hidden by the hood of her Shadowcat armor. "Hello, General Blake," she said in a voice that was calm and cold. "Do you remember me? You sent me here to die 18 months ago. I thought you might like to know how that worked out." Blake stared at the screens in shock and rage. The face was different, and the voice was harder, but he recognized Kate Sullivan. The woman he had tried to murder was not only alive, but had been stalking him like an animal. "Impossible," Blake whispered. "No one survives this place." "You're right," Kate said. "Kate Sullivan died here just like you planned. What survived is something new, something this planet made from your mistakes. If you want to kill me, you're going to have to come and do it yourself." The message ended with coordinates for the Quantum Crystal Processing Center. Blake had a choice. He could evacuate and admit that his operation had failed, or he could hunt down the woman who was destroying everything he had built. Blake chose to hunt. He took his remaining soldiers and went after Kate with the confidence of a man who had never lost a fight. He had weapons and armor and training that should have been able to handle one woman no matter how dangerous she had become. Kate was waiting for him in the heart of the processing center, surrounded by machinery that hummed, with enough energy to power a starship. She stood in the open wearing her armor made from Shadowcat hide and carrying weapons forged from the bones and crystals of the planet's deadliest predators. "You should have killed those civilians when I ordered you to," Blake said as he and his men surrounded her. "Then none of this would have happened." "You're right," Kate replied. "I should have killed you instead." The battle that followed was unlike anything Blake had ever experienced. Kate moved like the predators she had learned from. She used the machinery and the darkness and the confusion to turn the processing center into a killing ground. Blake's soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy who seemed to be everywhere at once. Kate had learned from the Phase Wolves how to use multiple attack routes simultaneously. She had learned from the Sky Terrors how to strike from above without warning. Most importantly, she had learned from the Void Render how to make her enemies feel helpless and afraid. One by one, Blake's soldiers fell to traps and ambushes and weapons they could not understand. Kate fought with the patience of a hunter and the fury of someone who had been betrayed. Every move was calculated to cause maximum damage and psychological impact. In the end, Blake found himself alone in the processing center facing the woman he had tried to murder. His weapons were gone and his armor was damaged. Kate stood over him with her quantum crystal spear pointed at his heart. "You have a choice," Kate said, using the same words Blake had once used on her. "Surrender and face justice for what you've done, or run and be hunted like the animal you are." Blake chose to run. He fled deeper into the facility with Kate following, like a shadow. The chase led through the mining tunnels and up into the storm region where the planet's weather turned the pursuit into a nightmare of lightning and acid rain. Blake died where he had always belonged. Alone and afraid on a world that existed only to kill. Kate did not use her weapons on him in the end. She simply abandoned him in the storm region and let Vorthak Prime finish what it had started. When rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they found the facility destroyed and Blake missing. The cryogenic chambers had been opened and the frozen prisoners were being cared for by the facility's medical systems. Evidence of the conspiracy was being broadcast to every news network in human space. Kate met the rescue teams at the landing. Pad wearing the armor of a predator and carrying weapons that belonged in a museum of impossible things. She looked like something between a human and the planet itself, wild and dangerous and completely unafraid. The investigators who came later could not decide if Kate Sullivan was a hero or a monster. She had exposed corruption and rescued hundreds of innocent people. But she had also killed dozens of men using methods that were more animal than human. Kate did not care what they called her. She had found her purpose on Vorthak Prime, and it was not justice or revenge or even survival. It was something simpler and more important. She had learned that humans could adapt to anything and overcome any challenge. The galaxy was full of worlds that other species called impossible to survive. Kate intended to prove them wrong. She established the Vorthak Protocol with volunteers who were willing to